Hello dear friends, welcome back. Let us discuss about the structure of the iris in detail. In the previous lecture I introduced the iris. You can go and watch that lecture also to have knowledge from the beginning about the iris. Now let us go in detail structure of iris. As I told you, iris is a colored flat adjustable diaphragm which is present in the anterior segment of the eye behind the cornea and anterior or in front of the lens. Right. Now if you talk about the structure of the iris, we will have to have a diagram here. First of all, I will draw a diagram. For example, we will represent the ciliary body. This is the ciliary body, right? Now here will be your iris suspended, so look carefully. This is our iris. I will draw it a little bigger in order to have a clear concept of each parts of the iris, right? Like this. This is the iris. Right, this is our iris, right? Now let's see inside iris and see its structure. Look carefully, friends. Here you know that this will be our choroidal layer, right? And here is, you know that your retina is present there, right? This is the retinal pigment epithelium. Then there is rods and cones, right? Rods and cones. And then there is the neural layer of the retina will be there. This is the neural layer. So you know that I have discussed all these while I was discussing about the structure of the ciliary body in detail. So once again we will say that at this point, at the beginning point of the ciliary body, the rods and cones will disappear and these two layers will go further forward. That is your retinal pigment epithelium will come forward, and this retinal pigment epithelium will not stop here and it will go further forward, right? And it will cover on the posterior surface of the ciliary body of the iris also. You know that these are epithelial cells, so we should draw them like this. These are all the epithelial cells, right? And here these epithelial cells is a little bit pigmented. They contain pigments in order to give color to your eye, either green pigment or brown pigment, these kind of pigments. So this is the retinal pigment epithelium, and this retinal pigment epithelium will also cover the posterior surface of your iris, and it will a little bit come down and it will cover also the free margin of your iris like this, right? And then the you know that the rods and cones will disappear at oris reta, as I had told you, and this neural layer will come further forward like this. This is the neural layer of your retina, and it has come forward on the posterior surface of the ciliary body, right? It covers the ciliary processes, and when it goes further back forward on the back of the iris, it becomes more pigmented, right? It's a little pigmented here, but it becomes more pigmented, and like this, these cells, like I will tell you one thing, that all these cells or the pigment the neural layer which come from the retina, you know that, and these cells are also become the epithelial cells, right? And they go on the posterior surface of your iris and comes a little bit interiorly at the free margins of the iris. So look carefully. These cells contain lots of pigments, so that we say that the pigment is enough, very much, that will not allow to us to see the nucleus of these cells, right? So they contain lots of pigments. So these are the pigmented epithelium of your iris, right? So posteriorly, iris is covered by two layers of cells, two layers of epithelial cells, and these cells are called the pigment epithelium of the iris, and they contain lots of pigments, right? Then these are the two layers. These are the pigment epithelium. Now we move further forward, and this is the stroma. As I had told you in the previous lecture that the iris contains two layers, the stromal layer and the epithelial layer, right? Look carefully. This is the epithelium. Now where the epithelial layer vanishes and finishes off, this point is called the papillary ruff, right? What is papillary ruff? At the iris, right, at the free margin of the iris, where the pigment epithelium finishes, stops, and do not go further forward, that point is called the papillary ruff. Now next to these two layers, next to these two epithelial or pigment epithelial layers, here we will discuss, or let me stop discussing this point. Let us discuss the stroma of this iris. As you know that this is the anterior surface and this is the posterior surface, right? So the anterior surface of the iris is covered by certain fibroblast or fibrocyte cells, right, like this, and these cells will join the papillary ruff, right, like this, and in between them there are certain melanocyte cells also present there, right? Melanocytes, they will provide the melanin, right? So if you talk about the anterior surface of the eye, of the iris, and if we draw it three-dimensionally like as shown in the book, right? So we can draw it like this. In a three-dimensional structure, you can draw your iris like this, right? So look, we have cutted the iris. This is the anterior surface, right? Anterior surface, and this is the posterior surface, and this is the pupil end, right? This is the pupil, right? So on the anterior surface there are, as I told you, lots of fibroblast cells located here, and in between these cells there are certain melanocyte cells also present on the anterior surface of this iris, right? Then one thing more, in between these cells there are certain small gaps or channels, you can say some channels, and through these channels food substances and the aqueous fluid will go inside the iris and will come outside the iris. Look carefully here, friends. Here is your aqueous chamber, right? Anterior chamber, aqueous fluid is present there. Now if we know that there are small capillary networks, right, or channels in between the iris and the anterior chamber. Now look carefully, from the anterior chamber the aqueous fluid will jump inside the iris through these channels, right? And when the iris will squeeze, these fluids will again jump into the anterior chamber. So these are what? These are the channels through which exchange of different substances occur between the aqueous fluids or anterior chamber and the iris and the body of the iris, right? So we say, what are these cells? These cells which are present there, these are melanino or melanocytes. These are melanocytes. Then these blue cells are your fibrocytes, or you can say fibroblasts also, right? Fibroblast. And these are the channels right? So these channels will be like this inside, which will allow the food substances or the fluids to enter the stroma of the iris, and when the iris squeezes or contracts, then these fluids will again go into the anterior chamber. Done. Then the next thing that we should know is that in the stroma of this iris there are lots of other cells also, and these may be some melanocytes. Melanocytes are also present there. What? Melanocytes are there in the stroma. Then we know that also that there are some fibroblasts and fibrocytes are also present there. We should not forget them, right? And all these melanocytes are responsible to give color to your iris. You know that how our iris is colored, a brown pigment or the green pigment and other things, right? And along with these, they contain lots of collagen fibers also. We know that the stroma must contain certain collagen fibers also, so there are certain collagen fibers also present there inside the stroma of this iris, right? So look, what we can see here, these are the fibroblasts or fibrocytes. Then we see that there are some collagen fibers, collagen, and then we see that there are certain melanocytes. Melanocytes are also present there.